Hey everyone, welcome to the Agent Hustle Network, how to 4X your sales. Today we have Spencer Hsu from eXp Realty coming in. He's gone in the last 3 years, he's went from 10 million to 40 million to 80 plus million, helping over 65 plus families buy and sell their homes. And we're excited to have Spencer on the show today to learn more about how he 4X'd his business and how he did it as a solo agent. Welcome so much. And thank you so much for being here today, Spencer.
Glad to be here. And thank you everyone for joining. I know we have 20 something people on so far. We'll probably get a few more. And I know you guys are all busy at 1 o'clock. So hopefully during this call, you'll learn a lot and maybe able to take away some nuggets to help you guys with your business. So Matt, do you want to do any other housekeeping or do you want me just to get going?
Feel free to get going.
Okay, so here's what I would have in mind. I'm going to do a little slide presentation, just a little bit about the journey of myself, but also like what I do on a day-to-day basis so that you guys may be able to emulate or learn a few things on your end. And of course, this is an interaction, right? So if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I'll get to it. At the same time, we'll have some time in between to unmute, but also at the end, we'll have some Q&A. So let's get going here. I think you guys should all see this slide presentation. So the highlight of today is the path to becoming a top producer in a couple of years. I'm going to go over a little bit of my trajectory. So some people may relate, other people may have gone, maybe have experienced some things depending on where everyone is at their journey, right? So a little bit about background about myself. I am born and raised in the Bay Area. My first decade, I was in software sales. I ultimately worked for smaller companies and sold to larger companies. And then I eventually made a transition and segue into real estate. I did not have a fast start, to be fair. I know a couple of people here are actually at my former office location at Keller Williams. So my first 6 months, I actually did not close a single deal. It wasn't that I wasn't doing anything, but like anything, some things just take longer. And the key is, are you putting in the effort and are you putting the work daily to plant those seeds? And eventually that first year, though, it did wrap up. I think my first transaction that closed was like in June or something of that first year. And then eventually I did 8 transactions that first year, which was about 10 million. And subsequently, it kind of accelerated. And I'll share a little bit of how that happened and some of the things that you guys can do to hopefully go through a similar trajectory. But the second year that I was in business in 2020, I did 35 transactions. In the last year, which is the third year in business, I did 63. Throughout this first 3 years, I was a solo realtor. So it was just myself. I had admins kind of towards the middle parts, I would say, of last year, maybe the beginning of last year. And I just kept kind of ramping up. And the goal this year is to more than double again of that. So the general course overview and what I want to go over is like, what are the critical disciplines that allow me to be able to scale to the way that I'm doing? What does my typical day look like? What are my lead pillars and what are just lead pillars in general that everyone can and potentially could use in my own personal experience? I'm also going to share what I would do differently. So given now I obviously have some time to look back and I'm always continuing to try to improve of what I'm doing, where could I have made improvements? Because now as I'm scaling up my own team, I want to help my realtors on my team not make the same mistake that I did. And there's different ways and a lot of things, a lot of lessons learned and a lot of money lost throughout the process that could have been done a whole lot better. So those are all things that we will cover today. At the end of each of these segments, I'll answer any questions that you guys may have on the chat. You'll also have the opportunity to, we can unmute and you can ask a question, maybe raise your hand to keep it a little bit cleaner and then we can unmute you individually. But I do want this to be interactive. So hopefully, like I said, you guys will be able to learn a lot. And the key though, is to take action into some of these things that are where you are in your business. So the key is laying the foundation, right? That's the fundamental thing. The most important thing is having a CRM at the same time, something that you will be willing and able to use daily, right? The CRM is that central database where everything lies. All conversations should be there. All notes should be there. So that way, when you have a further conversation with a client or an advocate or a partner, you're hopefully building upon that relationship, right? And I actually realized this. I actually had a CRM, a personal CRM, before I actually got into real estate. So even before, as an individual, just meeting friends and meeting people. And why did I actually build it up then? The reason is this. Think about this. How many of you have went to a networking event or a conference or met some really good people? And what happens? You have great conversations then, but then you don't ultimately, nothing kind of comes away from it, right? And as time goes on, it gets a combination of several things happen. It gets more and more awkward to bring up that conversation again. But also, as time goes on, you may completely forget that conversation. And if you think about it, just from your own time management perspective, if you're trying to build a relationship, it was almost as if you didn't have that conversation to begin with. And I would argue it's probably even more of a waste of time that you even had that conversation because nothing really happened of it. And so I knew that pretty early on. I was like, man, I'm meeting more and more people. I don't even remember these conversations, even though I still remember some were good. And I bet the others are the same because the others are not going to be as diligent of note-taking and of doing the proper follow-ups. And so I knew that pretty early on. And so I wanted to have this system internally at that time, even before real estate, of like recording conversations, as in like making my own notes of things that they are interested in or where they're at. And that way, when I have my routine follow-ups, we can try to add and build on those conversations, because that's how you can ultimately keep making better and better relationships. And so I realized that pretty early on that if you did that in real estate, you'll have deeper relationships and you'll have better relationships. And you're using the same amount of time anyways. You're talking to potential clients and partners. So that was extremely important, but I needed a CRM that allowed me to do this even better. To give you disclosure, I first worked with a CRM platform called HubSpot. It is a free one. So that was the benefit of why I even chose that. But then eventually I switched into a different CRM. Now it's called CRM Interactive. And the reason for that, and I looked at all CRMs, was because it has a good amount of automation in terms of automatically sending out messages if I wanted to for different types of people that I want that to be automatic drip on an individual basis. Also, it can give you automatic follow-up reminders. So for example, if you really want to say, I want to make sure I follow up every 3 months on an individual, there's cadences that can be in place to remind you of doing that automatically. So that way, if you send out a message out, you don't, if you only had like one task, you may forget, and then that may be lost, forever. So you need some sort of cadence that will remind you to do these, follow-up conversations or follow-up meetings. But at the end of the day, what I still find most important though is whatever CRM you use, whether it's a CRM, even a Google Sheet, you got to use it. And you want to use it daily because this is your system of record. I mean, think about it that way. It's your system of record. Everything lives and breathes within that system. And so you always want to keep building it and expanding it. And the bigger your database, the more likely you are to do business with people who are also potentially partners. So that's what I have here as well. You just keep adding to your database daily. My goal is to every conversation I have, whoever I meet, whether it's another realtor, it's a partner, it's a client, it's a potential customer, I just try to keep adding to this database. And over time, it's a compounding effect. A combination of you have more and more within your portal. At the same time, you have deeper relationships. And that's always the beauty of what we all do as realtors in this industry. So what do my days look like? I'm also very structured in terms of my days because there are certain key things about your day that you don't want interrupted unless you have no choice. But generally, most things are not that super time sensitive, as in like you literally need to do it right now. Some can wait for the afternoon, right? Some needs to get done within the same day, but does it have to be done literally right now? Most of the things are not. And so it's about prioritizing your day. What are the most important things of your daily routine? the most important thing of your day is having conversations, right? Conversations with clients, conversations with past of advocates, conversations with potential clients, combination, just general follow-up, could be leads that you have, right? You want to ensure that you get through that. And usually the best part of the day to do that is in the morning for several reasons. You may get busier in the afternoon. You may get lazier and forget about doing it, right? Because this is a lot of manual work and manual efforts. And so you really want to block that off saying, look, this is what I'm going to be doing every day in the morning, 9 to 12, very structured. I'm going to do follow-ups. I'm going to do meetings. I'm going to try to set up appointments for my afternoon. And then that way in the afternoon, you're doing the different things that I have shown up. Maybe you're doing a showing. Maybe you're doing strategy calls. Maybe you're just having meetings. Those are all bunched up together because you want to keep them all together and not kind of trickle back and forth, because that's very disruptive, right? When you're making your calls, you want to just keep going, boom, 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 in a row versus just going back and forth and losing momentum. So that's why I personally do that. I find that very effective. Nothing is in my morning. Like this meeting that we have is not in the morning. There's no reason for this to be in the morning, right? This could easily have been in the afternoon because that's where I personally have free time and I want to protect it. So you always want to think about that, because the calendar that you have is what you can control and protect. Even though we all live these kind of crazy lives for clients, some clients are crazy, crazy stuff happens, fire happens. The reality is, you think about it, does it really need to happen right now? Like literally right now? Can it wait a few hours? Like I said, you're not waiting until like the end, you're not waiting until tomorrow, but does it absolutely need to be done right now? If not, you should move it and have it in the afternoons and not in the mornings, which is your precious follow-up schedule on your time. And then what do I do in the evenings? I mean, I do work a lot, so I do other things that are even less time sensitive, but they still need to be done, right? Whether it's business things, maybe finance related. For me, I do a lot of content, so it'd be content creation, right? There's all these things that are not that time sensitive in the day. I can do it using later in the evenings, where it's going to be less kind of people disrupting me. It could be reviewing disclosures, right? That doesn't need to be in the morning either. There's all these things that are not that super time sensitive that can be done when there's less windows when you're talking with clients, things like that. So that ends that section. I'd love to see if there's any questions about kind of the laying the foundation. So which CRM are you using? Actually, it's not CRM Interactive, it's called Sierra Interactive. So you can use that. I found it very, very good. There's a lot of options. So, if you're within my brokerage at EXP, I think KV Core is included. You can use that. I use Sierra. There's like Follow Up Boss. I forget what other ones. Those are the main players, at least in the real estate CRM space. Yang, when did you realize you were ready / wanted to leave 9 to 5 to pursue this career? That's a great question. So let's go back into it, right? So the backstory was this. There was actually several, I'll just go back of like kind of my first decade in technology sales. Several things, and it all kind of happened simultaneously. I was always working at smaller companies. And because I was working at smaller companies, there is a lot more politics and there's a lot more things out of my control. So for example, in the enterprise software sales role, let's say your goal is to sell a couple of $1 million, and then that's equivalent to a couple $100,000 of commissions a year, whatever it is. Well, in that industry, they can always change that at any time. And quite frankly, as a manager perspective, it's from a manager perspective, there might be more incentivized to say, look, if Spencer is doing really well, we may just try to add in another person to cut his territory in half, and then just now have two of you to do it, which also then cuts your opportunity in half. And that was like really messed up, right? Like, how does this make sense when you try to get your top performer to potentially earn less and make it even harder? So I thought like that process was unfortunately pretty unfair. I didn't like that at all. and it was out of my hands. That's number one. Number two, if you think about it, you're selling software. So you as a salesperson are entirely up to the technical expertise of your company, of the product managers, of what they create, right? And especially if you're a younger company, there's a lot of bugs, a lot of problems. And ultimately, I didn't like my reputation and credibility to be like this person that's almost selling kind of a version of vaporware. I didn't feel good about that. And so that was also a component. And then I guess the last component is the opportunity to do my own thing, right? Because with real estate, for all of us, you have the opportunity, and I have joke on this, you have the ability to work 40 hours. You have the, what was the saying? The way that I think about it is I have the opportunity to work 80 hours a week so I don't have to work 40 hours a week for someone else ever again. And so that's a liberating thing. I don't have to work for anybody else, but I do work for a whole lot more. But then again, we're all working for our own brand, our own business, and that's incredibly empowering. So that's the backstory. You mentioned Lee Brock, you mentioned recording conversations. Could you say more about that? I'm talking about recording as in like you're jotting down notes. So for example, if I found a good conversation, let's say we're having a one-on-one meeting and I found some good conversation, you talked a little bit about your friend or your family or what your wants are, whatever it may be, I would take those notes down because that's important for us, for me to also know and to want to build up, because I want to personally know, yeah, how is your daughter doing at tennis or whatever it is? Like, it's good for me to know so we can keep building upon that, because as we all have more and more conversations with other people, we will just naturally forget more. I mean, there's only so much that can be in a human brain, but when it comes to, software, you can have infinite things there. Wei Bin, why do you think the first 6 months were slower? What did you do in the second half of the first year to get momentum? It's just like anything else. Like when you get started, nobody knows what you do. Nobody trusts you, nor should they. You're not, just because you're a realtor. How many realtors are there now in the Bay Area? How many realtors are there in the country? I mean, there's a lot. And even the last 2-3 years, given the opportunity for a lot of people to work remotely, you better bet a lot of people have way more side hustles than ever before in history. And that's a big reason why people are returning back to the office, because they know that's happening. People have 2 or 3 jobs. And so that's normal, right? Like, you have to earn that trust. You have to let the people that are in your network or the people that you meet know you, like you, and trust you to eventually go through that purpose. But as they do that, then they hopefully have a very good experience, and that becomes an amplifier. And then you want to reward them and thank them and have events and keeping on top of mind, take them out to lunch, dinner, right? I mean, we'll talk about lead pillars in a bit, but those are the reasons. And it wasn't anything different. Yeah, there was different things that you keep, like different skills of different things to say. Your conversion is slightly better. But at the end of the day, the way to think about it is it's all a funnel, right? Let's say you are very skillful and you can change your conversion from, I don't know, 5% to 8%, which is a very good improvement. I mean, that's basically, that's significantly improving your ability. But at the end of the day, it's still a funnel, right? So if your funnel is so small, like you just don't have as many as bats. So you want to get as many as bats as possible. You get as many as bats as possible by having as many conversations as possible. Yang Lu, follow up. Did you build up the realtor business to some point before hopping off your sales job, or did you just dive into real estate cold? So everybody has their own opportunity for this. Fortunately, I don't think I'm going back to the corporate world. But for me, I actually found a job that allowed me the ability to do real estate, in a sense, a lot. And so that was just a psychological thing where I still had like a paycheck, even though I didn't really need it, but it was a psychological thing, right? I never did my own business before. So just psychologically, it was weird where like, I'm not getting this, direct deposit every 2 weeks into my account. Eventually it caught on, which it made sense because I wasn't doing anything there. But that may also have accelerated things. Now I had no choice. And the thing to think about this is a full contact sport, right? Because at the end of the day, for you all that may be considering or doing this part-time, the downside is you're competing with a lot of people, even on this call, that are doing it more than full-time. And so you are at a massive disadvantage, right? And this is a momentum business, right? If I was doing this half time, I would be one, distracted mentally, but also two, I wouldn't have the velocity, right? Because these are exponential. Like the growth and the opportunity for most of you all is, it's not, 10 more deals a year. You should be doubling at least, until you're at a certain point, then it's harder to double. But realistically, you have the opportunity to double every single year. And for me this year, I want to do 150. Obviously, I have to do things very differently to do that. I can't do that on my own, but it is possible. So that's the key, right? It can increase very, very quickly. So that's something to be mindful of. If you work in high tech, no one works 40 hours a week. They expect 60 hours. It depends on a job. I would completely disagree with that. I mean, I have many clients that work at Meta or AKA Facebook. They work less than 40 hours a week and they get paid a lot of money. So it all depends on the company. It all depends on the work. And the reality is you're working 60 to 80 hours a week for a high tech company, especially in this kind of labor market, which is absolutely on fire and insane. I mean, how many of your clients work in big tech and they have infinite options for career growth and opportunities? They may, I'm not saying it doesn't, but there's a lot of opportunities that I would completely disagree with that. Matt, yep, 69, yeah, nothing special. If you thought Lane County was big, I mean, imagine what the Bay Area is. Michael, would you recommend jumping into real estate full-time when getting started as a new agent, or do you think you can still be successful starting out part-time? I did answer this earlier. I mean, the way that I think about it is this: it depends on what your runway is. Make no mistake, the growth that I had is more unusual, but it is possible. Like, I'm proof that it's clearly possible. Members of my team are 2 months in, something like that. They're already doing their first deal. They're already in contract. So it is possible to do it. You want to have the right mentor. You want to have the right team, but you better be willing to work your butt off. I'm sure there's people that can do it successfully part-time. It just depends on what your metric is, right? People's definition of success is different. If you want to do a few deals a year and keep your current job, it's not a bad gig, right? I mean, that's not a bad thing to earn X amount. But if you want to have this as a potential business and to potentially change your life, then like anything, you got to work more than full-time because you got to catch up, right? If you just work 40 hours a week now, it's going to be hard for you to catch up with people that are like myself that work 80 hours a week for years now. And we have many big producers on this call too. So that's the way to think about it. But the measurement of success is different. And that's the cool part. Joanna, I want to do real estate, but how do I get my real estate license? Yeah, it's very simple. You can look it up. There's online courses that you first take. You got to pass that. This at least for California. And then you submit that to the board, and then you take your in-person exam. To be realistic though, if you were to start today, I know things are pretty backlogged. I think even if you do it as fast as possible, it'll probably take you like 4 months or something. How many contacts a week you do per week? I, quite frankly, don't track it too much. The goal objective that I hear from members' perspective, if you add about 5 contacts a day, that's pretty good. Because that's a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings that you have. I would say though, 5 contacts a day is a goal. And there's many ways to do that, whether it's paid leads, whether it's organic, things like that. All right, let's go to the next section. And then feel free to ask any questions. I'll answer afterwards. So the next thing is your lead pillars, right? There's so many opportunities to spend money. Make no mistake. There are tons of ads, I'm sure, on your social media feed for you to spend money at the next hottest thing. And so the reality of that is understanding, like the truth is they all work. But it all takes different time. There's different costs. And it's important for you to understand what are the sales cycles of different people. And so you can plan that accordingly, right? So here are the general sources. And of course, I'm sure there's others. Your main ones are your lowest hanging fruits, but depends on your circle, which is your sphere of influence. And so you can ultimately call them, you can have events, you can connect with them on social media. Those are going to be your lowest hanging fruits, right? They already know you. They hopefully like you. The question is, do they trust you? And that's your job to build that relationship and to ensure that what you do on a day-to-day basis get seen and for them to be aware of that. You also have organic kind of ways or free ways, right? You can add people on Facebook, you can add people on LinkedIn, you can participate actively in specific groups, you can make content on YouTube and TikTok and things like that, on Instagram. There's many ways for you to keep building it organically. It is time and effort, but there are ways for you to do that. Next, you have the paid sources, right? And not all paid sources are the same. Even between Zillow and Realtor.com, they're also not the same, right? Zillow, as an example, is one of the most expensive lead sources that you can get. Now, their model is different, right? When you go from Zillow and Realtor.com, those individuals are more lower hanging fruits and they want to go see a home. That's their whole business model. And versus if you ran like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google PPC ads, those may be just very early on and they may happen to come across something and then they want to start exploring and understanding options. And the key though is understanding that time frame, right? For like Zillow and Realtor leads, the numbers on that is about 6 months of a turnaround. That's the average in the industry. For like Facebook and Google PPC ads, I mean, realistically, they're about 2 years out on average. So why is that so important? Like just because a quote unquote Facebook lead is cheap, or they give you these kind of bogus numbers of $10 a lead, it's not $10 a true lead, right? Because you also have to factor in how long it takes. Do you actually have the right systems in place to manage it? Like I spent tens of thousands of dollars previously on Facebook and Google ads with nothing to show for it. And I learned that, right? Like with those, you may have to have somebody that routinely calls all the time. So you may have to bring in an ISA. You may need a CRM system that does automatic campaigns, right? It gets much more robust. But then the key, if you think about it, yes, the Facebook click is very cheap, but when you add them all together, it still is probably cheaper than Zillow if you are able to have that runway and at the same time you have that process. Because if you're not able to do it, then don't do it. Like if you're not really able to individually manage to follow up or have someone on your team literally follow up daily with calls and texts and emails, either automated or through an individual, do not waste your money. It's a complete waste of time. Right. And people can learn the hard way, but that's the reality of how that game works. Right. Because if you think about it, what is the buyer persona when they click on a Facebook ad under homes under 1.2 or whatever? Like they were not looking for homes when they're on Facebook typically. And so the conversion rate is way less and is way worse. And the time is longer and you need all these systems. So that's why it's not for everybody, even though they may market it of being this super attractive low quote unquote cost per lead. Then you have other platforms that are referral based, right? So Redfin has a partner model, UpCity has partners, you have tools like Clever, and then you have like you can do your farms, right? You could, people may have billboard ads, they can do direct mail. There's all sorts of different ways for individuals to spend money. Now, for those that do direct mailers, like this is a very difficult thing, even for myself. A big player does a lot of direct mail. But the key is just because they know you do it doesn't just mean you're going to get the deal whenever it comes time. They're still going to interview you, and they're probably going to interview some of the top agents as well anyways. So if you're not really good on one listing appointment to win deals, and you don't have the budget because direct mailing can be extremely expensive, then it may also not make sense, right? And that's what I wanted to point out. Like, there's so much ways to spend money, and there's different games for each. You can go really deep on any of these, and that's what you may want to do. Is if you want to do something, you want to go really deep in it, and you need to have everything involved. And for me personally, I do several of these things, but I try to go deep into the one that I feel like it's worth trying and worth experimenting on. And then we're going to go really deep. Like we have ISAs that call, we have campaigns that are being run. We're tracking the numbers, right? Because you want to know, like, where are your leads coming from? What is the cost of these leads? Not just the cost for their click, but ultimately the cost of an actual client, which is very important. How long does it take? Are you willing to go through that? Which is not for everybody, especially for those that are in the beginning trying to get some quick wins, and ultimately measuring them, right? These are all the critical things for people to be successful. Yeah, so those are the things that are needed to be successful. And you're welcome to try it, right? There's some that I don't even do and that I won't do. Some that I have done, I haven't found successful, but you may find successful. But either way, if you have this formula and you know the game, then you can kind of ramp up on it. Because if Facebook ads work, you could easily ramp up from $500 a month to 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever it is. It's not difficult for individuals to ramp that up. So you can go really deep on one pillar if it's productive and if you can scale, accordingly. So that's the thoughts there. So I'm going to go into the next pillar, but for now I can answer any questions about these or just my general thoughts. Joseph, if you use LinkedIn, you'll know many people clicked on your post. You won't know who unless you pay for premium. I have 1,000 connections, and that I get 30 to 40% of people clicked on the post. I think that's a crazy high rate, is to be very candid about clicking the post or at least viewing your content. That's 300 to 400 people. So you have, if that's truly the case, you have crazy high engagement. So the question is, why do you only have 1,000 connections, right? You may want to add more connections, right? Add that funnel. That's part of the game. Connect with more people, right? Yeah. And premium, I mean, think about this. 30 to 40% of people clicking on that post, that's 300, 400 people. You're not willing to pay premium? Premium is like, what is that? $90 a month? Like, seriously? Like, that's so little relative to that amount of visibility that you're getting. So that's the same thing as well. Track the number. If it's working, pay that premium. If it really helps you, I don't know if it does help you. I don't think it really helps you on the post side, because I'm a premium member. I think you're maybe referring to people that look at your profile, which is very different. Which paid lead source have you had the most success from? And as a new sales agent, which paid lead source do you recommend we use? Which paid source have you had? The most successful paid source, I'm going to have to say it's going to be Zillow. Right? There's a reason why Zillow is the biggest player in this space and why they're the dominant player. Now, as much as you may have an opinion for it or against it, it's just a funnel and it's just a lead magnet. At the end of the day, though, the question is, what is your return on that? And are you willing to pay for it? Zillow is not cheap, right? So if you do not have the budget to pay for that month over month, which you'll need to do at least, I think, 6 months, then don't do it, right? Your best lead source, paid lead source, is taking maybe your friends and advocates out for dinners or cocktails or whatever, so they hopefully bring in you business, because that's going to be ultimately your best. When you eventually scale, you only have so many events that you can host or these meetings that you can do. And so as you scale, then you start thinking about these other avenues to supplement it, but you still keep doing the core things. But that's the idea. That's why there's these lead sources. That's how the value works on both ends. As you build your business, your time is worth differently. And we're going to talk about that after. The value of your time is very different. So every coffee meeting you now have, me jumping on this call for the Zoom, my dollar per hour gets higher and higher. So your decision-making is going to be different, right? Do I just spend that money instead and have a process and I just want more filtered people? Or do you do it the more organic route and obviously the cheaper route as you get going? Which lead source do you guys find the most valuable in your business? Yeah, that was a question from Matt. I only post real estate related things. I'm going to tell you how many clicks you had, the article. Yeah, then that's good. So like I say, you can keep expanding that because it seems like it's working well. So Matt, why don't we segue into, I know you want to do a quick thing for the sponsor video, and then we'll finish off with the last segment.
All right, guys, here's a quick word from one of our sponsors for today's series. Let me pull that up for you guys.
Are you a real estate agent in the San Francisco Bay Area who COVID-19 has affected the way you do business? Do you have have an effective strategy to make sure your marketing content stands out of the crowd and help you do more sales? Having a one-stop digital virtual tour of your listing is the way to go to crush it in the new way people buy and sell their homes. With 13 years of experience in the photography and video industry, we do photos, videos, 3D, and in the sky stunning drone footage that will elevate your business. So click the link below so we can help take your business in the sky.
Cool. Go ahead, Spencer.
Okay, let's go for it. So let's wrap up. Okay, so what would I do differently, right? Like I think I'm okay with the growth that I have, but there's so many things I would have done differently. And at the end of the day, it's all a learning thing. So as long as we're learning and we're improving, then we're continuing to progress and to continue to kind of scale up. So at the end of the day, as you start doing more and more, right, the question that you all should have is, what is your time worth? And your time worth can mean many different things, right? It could be because you want to spend time with your family. It could be because you wanted to make more money. They all will be different depending on the individual, but you should think about that and calculate that. If you want a very simple math, like let's say you made 100,000 this year, just simply divide that by 2. That's roughly your dollar per hour. And so if you think about it that way, the question, and you may want to do this exercise. I did this exercise a couple of times now, and I would suggest you all do it, is every 30 minutes, write down what are you actually doing at that 30 minutes, right? Literally write it down, whether you're replying to an email, whether you're doing something, I don't know, whatever you're doing, write it down. And then do that for a couple of days. And at the end of those few days, look at it. If your dollar per hour is X, be very honest. Did that thing that you just did, is that worth that amount of money? Or should you find somebody or outsource it, right? For example, maybe it's paperwork, transaction paperwork, right? Maybe it's having disclosure signed. Those are all very critical, but you can get somebody to help you with that. Now, you still need to double check. So do not offload it all to somebody else and just say, it's not my problem. That's not how it works. You got to still train them and you got to help them, and you are still responsible for it. But all that is very manual, right? Doing the individual docu-signing, all these different things. That's a manual thing. That's not really your best use of time. And so as you do more and more, your dollar per hour is different, right? Like my dollar per hour now is different than when it was when I was my first year. So think about that and think about, does it make sense for what you're doing? At the end of the day, for all of us as realtors, our core things are having conversations, having appointments, showing homes, negotiating, and ultimately closing deals. If we don't close deals, we're not making any money. And so those are your core things. All these other things are important, but they're not the core things that will ultimately improve your dollar per hour. So just be mindful of that. And so what are things you can scale? What are things that are not worth doing? It could be social media posts. It could be content. It could be designing flyers, right? It could be printing things. It could be picking things up. It can be dropping off signs. Like there's all these other side things, right? So it's very important for you all to take note of what are the important things for you. And a lot of it is also because as you realize the value of your time, then you may need other people to help you with these different things, right? Whether it's TC work, there are people that you can hire per transaction. Many companies have that. There's individual TCs that just do it per deal, and you only pay them after if you actually close, or you may even have to bring somebody in-house to do that. You may have general admins that run around and do local errands for you, pick stuff up, et cetera, et cetera. You may have virtual assistants. So you'll be surprised, and I was surprised of how much like a Filipino, as an example, like an outsourced VA can actually be responsible for. We have a massive labor shortage here in the US. But it'll be pleasantly surprising for you all to realize, wow, these guys that are out of the area for what they get paid can do a lot and can handle a lot. Now, like anything though, you need to go through your tests, you need to go through your processes, you need to experiment, and you keep going through it. So I'm not saying just because it's cheap, you'll get the best one within one try. Like anything, you need to train them, you need to interview them, you need to manage that, right? Those are the things that are very important for you all. So keep that in mind. Just because it's cheaper isn't always better, but they can be good. And if they're not getting trained correctly, don't look at them as the problem. Look at yourself. Maybe you need to change your policies. Maybe different things you have to do has to be different, things like that. Losses, like in my case, showing assistance, right? Like as I do more, I have partners that do tours for them, opens the door for them, allows them to go see places privately. I don't have to be the individual because I can't do it at all times, but I want my clients to still have a great experience. So they'll do different showings with my partners. And then last but not least, that's certainly where I'm at now, is I need to bring on more agents. So this is a call for anybody or anyone that knows, anyone that is looking to join a team and to have like my mentorship and things like that. That's the only way, just logistically, for me to get to the numbers that I want to get to. I can't keep doing it myself. There's an aspect of time, nor do I want to be fair. And so I personally need to bring on more agents, and that could be on your level too, depending on where you're at, where it doesn't make sense for you to keep doing it for whether it's from the monetary reasons or from your family commitments. So I personally am trying to bring on more agents that are hardworking. As you can see, it's not easy, but there is a path to get there. Okay, that's about it. So these are the questions. These are the general frameworks of how I got to where I'm at. I'd love to open up for any remaining questions. Otherwise, we will wrap up. I know Matt has some closing to also mention. We have a cool upcoming live event, but Matt will tell you about that in a bit. So let's go through it. Any other questions? If you want to raise your hand, you can talk. Otherwise, you can type it out. Joanna, thank you so much. We can certainly talk about it after. Get your license first. The reality, as I mentioned, without the license, you can't do anything anyways.
Any thoughts on door knocking or flyers, Spencer?
I think, like I said, any of these pillars work. So the question is, are you willing and able to do it consistently? Just like any of these pillars, all the follow-up is not just the first try. So if you're not willing to commit to door knocking like consistently within the same homes, same areas, then don't do it. Like I have members of my team that do it consistently every month, the same home, and they track it because that's how you build up the relationship, right? They have to see you over and over again. So you have to be willing to do that, and it's not easy, right? And so it works. Clearly, there's a lot of people that have been very successful for that, but at the same time, you need to be able to commit to it. So anything that you saw of the lead sources, you need to do it consistently. If you do that, you'll be successful.
Okay, another question too, people ask is, how do you track all these different avenues that you're doing? Are you guys using a spreadsheet? You guys using some software?
That's a good question. So I use a tool called Sisu. I'm going to write it here. So I think it's a monthly amount. You can probably pay annually. And Sisu is a really good analytics tool and analytics portal. It has a lot of opportunities to tie in with your existing CRM platform. And then it's a lot cleaner interface. So what I use Sisu for is I track my transactions there. I track, you have the analytics, like as in you can, because you can also just manually import it in of like what your monthly cost would be of like Zillow or whatever it is. And then you'll have a breakdown of how many leads actually came in, cost per lead, cost per closing, things like that. It can get extremely more robust. So the fact is I'm kind of like a newbie level on the ability with Sisu, but it gives me what I need. So I know, okay, wow, Zillow is working well, because that's how you can decide, because all of these can work. And just because it works, if it works, like I think it's so silly / stupid for people to be like, oh, I spent $1,000 in Zillow and I made $10,000 or something, whatever it is, right? Then the question is like, why don't you just 10x that? Like that makes no sense. Like you shouldn't brag about that. You should be like, that's a very clear sign. You made 10x on a lead source, which is crazy. Think about this. You getting a realtor referral is like 25%, 30%. That's equivalent to about 4x, right? Do the math. That's like equivalent of 4x. If you can get like anything even remotely close to that, you would do that all day. Like seriously, that's very basic math, right? If you were really telling the truth though. If you didn't really know your numbers, you may not actually be willing to do that. But if you were able to do it, why wouldn't you? That's how I scale up my Zillow, right? Like I initially spent X amount. I'm like, hey, look, this kind of works, or it does work. Oh, wow, my return on this is pretty good. It's pretty high. Let's ramp it up. Okay, wow, it still works. It got a little bit worse, but it's still very worthwhile. Ramp it up again. Or there's some avenues. So I say, wow, this does not work. All right, we'll dial it off completely. Because like I said, you have the pillars, but you don't need to do multiple pillars, right? You just need to, you can expand deep into a pillar. Because you can spend $100,000 a month on Zillow if you wanted to. Like there's abilities to do so, whether you want to do it or not. But there may be ways to do it. And never mind Facebook and Google. I mean, think about how massive those companies are. You can clearly spend way more money if it is working and if you have the systems in place.
And we have a few more questions from the audience.
Okay, so Matt, love to find out about referrals regarding international buyers who are looking to purchase larger dollar home, commercial, so much traffic to the Bay Area, but any tips and tricks creating opportunities to engage with international buyers? The question, so here's the reality, right, Matt, is you want to understand where these buyers are coming from. And there's two ways to do it. And this is no different. Like I'm getting bombarded with people and I get it on one end, but you want to think about this. People that will have a specific dollar amount will be looking in specific markets anyways. So whether it's New York, it could be Seattle, it could be parts of Texas, it could be Bay Area, it could be LA, right? That's where they're already looking because there's so much mind share there. However, once they come look at a place, they may not be okay with the opportunities that are here. And so for you, the question is, maybe it's not the best way for you if you're in a smaller town or area to try to change all those minds. I mean, think about Canada and think about like just hypothetically Chinese buyers, right? In mainland China. They're mainly in like Vancouver and they're massive in Toronto, right? Now, you being, let's say you're in Calgary, you trying to lure them when those are the two big hubs is going to be very difficult because there's massive network effects that have grown and grown and grown. So your goal shouldn't be doing that. Your goal should be somehow attracting those other agents to be like, hey, look, when there's an opportunity, or here, these are opportunities for you and your clients that could work if they kind of give up or don't like the numbers or the math of those areas. That may be the play. But you have to add value too, right? Because if you think about it, in your position, you're almost like a feeder area. And so if you're a feeder area, then you have to figure out how do you add value to these people? Like you got to figure out where is your value add, not just taking business. Like anybody can take business, but how can you help them either educate them, do some co-marketing events, do some sponsorships, like help them bring in more clients for you, but don't just get it, fed in and things like that. That ultimately helps. What is a recommendation on how to best grow your market knowledge in specific market neighborhood, i.e. what to research that would make the most impact? It's just reading, looking at the numbers, right? Looking at the data. You all have access to MLS, so you can see the stats. So looking at the data itself is always a good avenue. That's what gets you pretty informed. But at the end of the day, like anything else, your goal is ultimately to make offers and get offers accepted. That's what will ultimately give you the most market knowledge of an area. Because when you're in the trenches, you know what things are going for before they actually close. That's a very competitive intel that the public doesn't have yet, right? So those are strategies to help you understand that. But also could just be, I want to say news articles. News articles are pretty outdated. If you think about when the reports actually posted, like you're seeing all this stuff now, but that's sort of like when you look at the date of those articles or the date of that data, it's like months ago. So look at your MLS, look at the recent stats. I mean, those are all as real time as it gets. So really study that. You can look by county, by neighborhoods, by types of properties. Those are the best. Lots of folks here in Oregon heading out, and obviously many heading here too, but love to hear how you have capitalized on reaching outside of the states, outside of Bay Area or outside of the US? I'll let you answer that real quick. Can you give examples of what you post onto social media and the frequency you do that? What is your farm or target market right now? So examples I post on social media, I'm quite frankly constantly changing this. I get kind of not necessarily jealous or envy, but I like what others are doing. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of engagement for that. So it's constantly kind of seeing what works for yourself, your brand, what you can do consistently, and then what you can do to improve to gain a more engagement. And think about this, right? So I do a lot less now of posting like I just closed this or I'm pending of that. I don't think people like it as much. And so now it's more maybe educational, but also informative. Those are great contents to have. I do a lot more listings. So I'm trying to keep improving my listing presentations and listing videos. So those are different things that I found to be more effective, but to each their own, right? To each their own. My farmer target market, I don't actually have a target market. So mine is very broad. So I cover the entire Bay Area. And the reason for that is because, especially in recent years, people have more flexibility to live anywhere than ever before. If you were a very niche player, you could have done well, but I personally have no issues driving a little bit further to give my clients more options. And fortunately, I track the data every week anyways, and I have clients in all markets. Good idea is build the pipelines by building relationships with the agents where I have, yep, that's good. Thanks, Wei Bin. From Sal, after you sell a home, do you send out just postcards? I do. So I do that. I do 3 campaigns. I will admit, I don't think it's been that effective. Postcards are a very hard game. All right, it's a very, very hard game. I am still trying to figure that out myself, and that's the thing. There are a lot of things that I don't do well, and I'm testing it. I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to get better. I do that. So I have the 3 phases, right? Kind of when it's about to hit the market, we're in contract or we're pending. We're changing our messaging all the time. We're trying to improve, like what can get some more responses. We're having people do door knocks to let them know about it. So we're trying all these different things. Outside the country, finding international buyers. Yeah, so I mentioned that. Thoughts on blogging? I mean, you can. I mean, I have someone on my marketing team that does some of that, but I don't put too much of a focus on that. Yeah, I don't have too much of a focus on that. It could be very viable. But I don't know anything related to blogging. But my team has some stuff related to that. Score provides the stats. You can put them on social media. I've noticed I get 30% when I post the stats. Yeah, that's very high. Like I said, I would argue that's incredibly high engagement. The question is, why is it that high, and why maybe are you posting enough? I mean, that's up to you to decide and tweak.